Halloween, the first great slasher movie. Yeah, it's been a while since we've looked at horror on this channel. The last time I think was Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie. So we're back with Halloween this time. Also, I saw the FNAF 2 trailer, it looks amazing. We've all seen a good slasher film before. A serial killer or supernatural monster hunting down a group of dumb, horny teenagers and scaring audiences since the 80s. Not even kidding, in the 80s, it was kind of a revolutionary time for the film industry, with the slasher genre getting very popular. You know the classics, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and the OG slasher, Halloween. Halloween was a slasher film released in 1978 and pioneered a lot of tropes used in the slasher films that still continue to this day. The story features a killer named Michael Myers, an iconic movie serial killer who's been frightening audiences for almost 50 years. He is trying to kill a bunch of teens, including one Laurie Strode, the nice book-smart girl next door, while also avoiding his arch-nemesis, Dr. Sam Loomis. Halloween was a small production made when John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were very young filmmakers, and were determined to make this great film despite the low budget. They spent a few weeks in a neighborhood with a small cast and crew, working hard to make one of the best horror films ever. When it did release, Halloween was crazy successful, being on a $300,000 budget and making $70 million. That was huge back then, and it made sense. How could you not see this film with its awesome poster? It's a jack-o'-lantern, but it's cast in a shadow so it looks like knives, and it's next to Michael holding a knife. It's so iconic. When this movie was through, it changed horror in film forever. Every slasher film that came after this in some way was inspired by this movie, adopting its cliches and character tropes for all the 80s slashers. In fact, going through this movie, I see a lot of tropes I see everywhere, and I realized this is where they were first used. So for fun, I am introducing the invention counter. As in, whenever an iconic movie cliche was invented in this movie, I will add a digit to the board to reinforce how influential Halloween was to not only slasher films, but films in general. With all that said though, how does Halloween hold up all these years later? I'm Rocko from Reamlore, and let's dive in. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We upload videos just like this one on our Reamlore channel. We upload a great new video every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so be sure you're subscribed with that bell pressed to get notified when we upload. The film starts and it got me invested right away because we heard the iconic Halloween theme. The iconic music was made by John Carpenter, and there is a fun story behind its creation. As a kid, Carpenter's dad taught him how to play the bongos, and using the tempo of those beats, he transformed it into a theme on piano. And something else I have to mention, when this film first came out, many kids and teens had to cover their ears because it was too scary. And to be fair, if this was my first time hearing it, I would have been in the same boat. I heard it about 700 times already, but hearing it at the start of this movie gave me chills. The opening credits look amazing too, by the way. As it appears, the text is being illuminated by the jack-o'-lantern candlelight. It's great, along with the camera zooming in on the jack-o'-lantern. This was also one of the first times that Halloween was used as a title or theme of a film. Yeah, I know that's crazy hearing that right now, but it was true in the 70s. Another fun fact, the first Halloween movie came out the same year as the first Superman film with Christopher Reeve. 78 was a big year for movies. We truly opened in Haddonfield, Illinois on, you guessed it, Halloween night in 1963. We get our first look at the Myers house from a first-person perspective, which is just a genius way to open this film, because it's already unsettling as this whole opening sequence we are viewing as if we are right there in the scene. What we're watching is a pair of horny teenagers make out and go upstairs to go to fourth base. They're also idiots because they left the back door wide open, not unlocked, open, and get used to that because whenever you're in a slasher movie, your IQ goes all the way down. So bring down the invention counter, it rolls up to 1. From the first person, we see whoever's perspective this is grab a kitchen knife and watch as the boyfriend leaves. What? That was like 30 seconds, my guy. You couldn't last a minute in bed? What is wrong with you? We see whoever we're following. Okay, it's Michael Myers. There's no need to hide it, you know. Michael goes upstairs and picks up a clown mask from the boyfriend who left, obscuring our vision as he goes into his sister's bedroom where she is topless and brushing her hair. We then get a very iconic kill where Michael stabs his sister Judith, played by Sandy Johnson, again and again with a kitchen knife, even looking away from her as he does it. Michael goes outside and runs into his parents, who return from somewhere as they unmask him to reveal he's just a kid. We then cut to Smith Grove, Illinois, in the present of October 30th, 1978, 15 years later. We meet the best character in the movie and horror icon Dr. Sam Loomis, played by Pleasence, who is a legend in horror, starring in a bunch of movies, including the next 5 Halloween movies. He is driving to visit his patient Michael Myers along with a nurse who is used to wackos rambling on and on. Loomis talks about Michael, calling him it, very much implying he's different from all the other psychos. The reason they're doing this is because they need to take him to a judge by court order of law, which Loomis is not happy about, saying saying he never wants Michael to get out. The great theme starts to play as we see a bunch of patients have escaped and are now roaming the land. Loomis runs up to the gate to investigate as Michael jumps on top of the car and tries to strangle the nurse. She freaks out as Michael, being awesome, breaks the window and steals the car, driving away. Loomis saying the evil is gone before chasing after him. This is how you set up your main villain. With all the build-up and implications of everything he can do, combined with what we see he can do, you have the makings of one of the best serial killers in cinema history. We cut back to Haddonfield on the day of Halloween, and we meet one of the very best final girls ever, Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Yep, this features a 19-year-old Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut. Jamie is actually part of an acting lineage, with her mom being Janet Leigh, the same actress who got killed by Norman Bates in the shower. Yeah, she was the girl from Psycho, which was also a revolutionary horror movie. Jamie has had an awesome acting career since then, and that makes sense because she is just great. Laurie walks through the neighborhood and meets up with the kids she's babysitting. Tommy, played by Brian Andrews. I like Tommy. Something shocking for a film in the 70s, the kid characters aren't annoying, they're actually pretty charming. They walk by the Myers house, which Tommy says is haunted, but Laurie shows off it's fine as she drops a key off under the door. And we see a slight glimpse of Michael Myers behind the door. Tommy walks off as we see a really creepy shot of Michael's shoulder as he breathes like Darth Vader. Back with Loomis, he's yelling at the guy who I presume runs the mental hospital for not beefing up security for Michael and that he's going after him, knowing Michael wants to go home. Back with Laurie, she's in class where the teacher talks about fate, and no matter what somebody does, they are destined to their own fate. Laurie looks out the window to see the car Michael was driving, and we get the very first look at him in his mask, and it's so far away we can barely see it, but that's the point. We're not supposed to see it in full, just glimpses of his figure. Laurie looks away to answer a question about fate, and when she turns back, surprise, Michael and the car are gone without a trace. A classic trope in horror. I know I said this already, but there are so many classic tropes in here. It makes you go, oh hey, that's where that's from. That's why I have the board and why it rolls up to 2. At Tommy's school, he's getting picked on by some bullies who tell them the boogeyman is coming for him and that on Halloween night he comes back. Michael then arrives and bumps into one of the bullies, and this movie just has the best sound cues ever. Because as soon as he appears in focus, the theme starts blaring. And even in moments where you can't fully see him, when that theme plays, you know he's nearby. Michael then starts stalking Tommy, and I realized maybe horror movies should just go back to this. There's something so scary about seeing something like stalking in a movie, and you realize this could happen to you in real life. Dr. Loomis, meanwhile, is at a payphone trying to warn the police that Michael is coming back to Haddonfield, but all of the non-main characters are idiots, so they don't believe him. Loomis finds a crashed truck with no driver in sight, and using detective work, he realizes that Michael took the driver's uniform to look casual, and the truck driver is dead nearby. Back with Laurie, she is with her cheerleader friend Linda, played by PJ Soles, who did a lot of work in movies and TV. This is where we learn a little bit more about Laurie. She's not the dumb, boring final girl we would typically meet in slashers, but is instead a bit shy and closed off, preferring to read books and study than party. They are also joined by their other friend Annie, played by Nancy Keys, or Nancy Loomis, how she is credited, and she mostly starred in the Halloween movies. Laurie looks back to see Michael speeding with the car, and when Annie tells him speed kills, he stopped the car, and my heart skipped a beat because I thought he was going to march out and kill them all. The creepy music starts to play as we see the sweeping long shots of them walking. Linda walks off as Laurie notices Michael behind some bushes, but when they look, no one is there. Annie goes home as Laurie bumps into Annie's dad, Sheriff Leigh Brackett, played by Charles Cyphers. We don't see a lot of his character, but here he's a standout among other stupid policemen in slashers. Laurie goes home where she sees Michael standing outside behind some drying towels and disappears right as Laurie was looking at him. I'm pretty sure he teleported just now. Laurie then picks up the phone, but nobody's there, another classic trope, so bring down the board, it rolls up to 3. It was just Annie on the other end though, who was chewing food. Later that day, Laurie is outside her house watching some early trick-or-treaters and meets up with Annie in her red car, while Loomis arrives at a graveyard in Haddonfield. He was looking for Judith Myers, but her gravestone was missing, confirming his suspicion that Michael is here. Annie and Laurie are driving down the road, and we see Michael following them in his car, which is all kinds of creepy. They roll by Sheriff Brackett, who tells them someone broke into the hardware store and stole some masks, rope, and a couple of knives. Gee, I wonder who could have done that. They drive away as Sheriff Brackett meets up with Loomis, who wants to talk, oblivious to Michael driving right behind him. The girls start talking about the dance, and Laurie admits she doesn't have the guts to ask out her crush, Ben Tramer. Michael gets back to following them as his entrance music plays. Annie drops Laurie off at her house while she parks at a nearby house where she is babysitting. The dynamic duo of Loomis and Brackett roll up to the Myers house, and they figure out he's been living here. They go up to where Judith Myers was killed in the opening, and we learn a little bit more about Loomis and his connection to Michael. Loomis met Michael 15 years ago, and he could tell this 6-year-old with the blackest eyes and emotionless face was evil. He tried for 8 years to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up to keep the evil contained. I really like this backstory. I do enjoy the tragic aspects of a killer's motivation, but sometimes just having straight up evil people is more effective, because in real life there are just straight up evil people. Brackett wants to alert the rest of the police, but Loomis says that if they do that, Michael will run away. If they wait for him to return to his house, they can capture him. So Brackett decides to go with that, but keep his men ready. I'm shocked! This is another instance of slasher characters not being total idiots. They analyzed the situation and came up with a plan to catch Michael effectively. More of this in slashers, please. Laurie is babysitting Tommy and gets another call from Annie, who is babysitting Lindsay, played by Kyle Richards. Turns out Annie called Ben Tramer and told him Laurie had a big crush on him and set them up to go to the dance tomorrow. Tommy looks outside to see Michael standing there, but when Laurie looks, no one is there. While Laurie is upset Annie set up a date, Annie accidentally spills some butter on her clothes and undresses as Michael watches, reminding him of his big sister. He also kills the dog outside as Tommy watches the classic horror movie from the 50s, The Thing. And yes, this was a few years before John Carpenter would actually direct the famous remake of that movie, so it is really funny in hindsight. Tommy is still worried about the boogeyman coming after him, but Laurie explains on Halloween everyone tries to scare each other, and Laurie promises to protect Tommy if the boogeyman does show up. Annie, meanwhile, is going to use the washing machines in the shed where Michael locks her in. Lindsay gets a phone call from Paul, Annie's unseen boyfriend, and Lindsay helps Annie get out of the shed. Annie gets on the phone with Paul, and great directing here, because as Annie is pacing back and forth, Michael appears and disappears in the doorway. Annie takes Lindsay to Laurie and Tommy and tells Laurie if she watches Lindsay for an hour, she'll talk to Ben in the morning and help Laurie out. Annie goes back to her car alone, but she left the keys in the house. Great moment next, as while Annie's whistling and not paying attention, she opens the car door, which was locked a second ago, and as she sits down, she realizes it was unlocked by somebody, and Michael pops out from the back and strangles her to death. Something to note if you haven't seen this movie in a while. Michael Myers goes on a 45-minute break from killing after killing his sister. Unless you count the truck driver, but he was off-screened. Now on paper, they may look like the film would be boring waiting that long for a kill, but the tension building is excellent. This should be taught in film school because of the implications, the sound cues, and him standing out a shot. We constantly see Michael stalking his victims the whole time, making you think he could be anywhere watching, just waiting for you to go off on your own. Tommy sees Michael carry Annie back into the house, which freaks him out, but once again, when Laurie looks, no one is there. The dynamic duo are still outside of the Myers house, and Loomis is the best, scaring bullies from before with an impression. Brackett starts having doubt about this since Michael hasn't shown up yet, but Loomis is insistent, saying Michael had been waiting for this night to be unleashed. Brackett once again proves he's not an idiot and a relatable character, as he says he will stay if there's even a chance Michael is here, and he will protect the families of this town. Linda then re-enters the movie with her very 70s boyfriend Bob, played by John Michael Graham, who only did this movie and a movie called The American Nightmare, so I guess he's a big fan of Cody Rhodes. Bob is okay as a character, but he also says the worst line of the movie, saying while they're in bed, maybe they should rip Lindsay's clothes off too. The 10-year-old. I assume he meant Annie, but he definitely said Lindsay. How did no one catch that in the editing process? Whatever, purging that from my memory, they walk inside and we can reintroduce the invention counter, because the horny couple are here making out and banging, so it rolls up to 4. Back with Laurie, she is putting the finished jack-o'-lantern on the table and gets a call from Linda asking where Annie is since it's weird she's not here. The horny couple are glad Annie's gone though, since they can have fun in the bedroom for as long as they want. They finish up and Paul says the line, "You should never say in a horror movie, I'll be right back." So bring down the board again, it rolls up to 5. He's getting some beer, and when he goes to close an open screen window, Michael jumps out and does one of his most iconic kills. He grabs Bob's throat with one hand, lifts him up in the air, stabs him with a kitchen knife that goes through his body, and pins him to the wall. And then he does the very famous head tilting to admire his work. That is awesome and one of the best kills in cinematic history. Everything about it was pretty much perfect. It shows how strong and unstoppable Michael is while being really scary. And it's not too crazy as to make this seem impossible. I could picture a big buff guy being able to do this in real life. Upstairs, Michael returns to Linda, and the only scene I don't think works that well, because he slowly opens the door and he has this white sheet over him and Bob's glasses over that, and it's just too silly. I get it, he did this to make her think it's Bob, and there is something creepy about taking the glasses from a dead guy, but it just looks silly. This is also the first time we're seeing Michael not in the shadows, and it doesn't work. Linda, being dumb, falls for the ruse and pulls down her shirt to flash him, which is not a good thing to do around Michael, as we've seen. It is proven to make him very angry. Yeah, we actually see her topless here, which really surprised me. We did see Judith topless earlier, but our vision was obscured because of the clown mask, so it was hard to see. Nudity has been a thing in film since the 1800s, but most horror films in America between the 20s and 60s refused to show any nudity for censorship reasons. In the 70s, though, those rules have loosened up. I'm not saying this is the very first time nudity has been in a film or even a slasher film, but it did start a trend in slasher films to have the hot girl naked, so bring down the board again, it rolls up to 6. Linda calls Laurie, but Michael grabs her and strangles her with the phone cord, in a pretty brutal scene, dying as Laurie thinks this is another joke. The film made me realize something, by the way. In slasher films, everyone goes crazy about the insane kills. Like in Friday the 13th or Saw, there are some really gory kills, but honestly, I prefer this. Just straight, simple, effective, scary kills. I'm not saying the gory kills are bad, they're fine, and I appreciate the practical work that goes into making them, but to be honest, they are very cartoony. We're supposed to be scared when a serial killer murders somebody, but when I see gallons of blood explode from the human body as their limbs fly everywhere, it just takes me out of the atmosphere and experience. I feel like I stopped watching a scary movie and started playing Mortal Kombat. Now, I love Mortal Kombat, one of my favorite game series, but I'm supposed to be scared right now. This is also a good time to talk about the Michael Myers mask, because really this is the first time we get a good look at it, as he lifts the phone up to his head to hear Laurie's voice. The creative team were searching forever for a mask that would fit this movie, and they had a ton of different ones, including a clown mask at one point. But they scrapped that because they wanted something scary. They wanted to remove any recognizable human features, so they took a William Shatner mask, transformed it, and made it into the iconic mask we all know and love. And the instant reaction sealed it as the one and only, because while the other masks they had were fine and got a good fright, everyone clammed up when they saw the Michael Myers mask. They were all terrified, and yeah, same here. That thing looks scary. Laurie tries to call back the house, but nobody answers. Laurie puts the kids to bed as Loomis sees his stolen car parked down the street. He runs over to it and realizes Michael is somewhere nearby. Laurie walks up to the death house and gets in through the back door. She thinks her friends are playing a prank on her, but changes her tune real quick as she finds the bodies of her friends. Laurie finds Annie dead on the bed with the Judith Myers gravestone behind her, Paul hanging upside down in the closet, and Linda stuffed in the other closet. Laurie screams and runs out of there as Michael appears from a dark room to attack her. He was blind apparently, because instead of stabbing her, he just grazed her shoulder and she fell down the stairs. Her plot armor was just too strong, I guess. Some of the best music plays as Laurie tries to get out of the house, and this starts a little something referred to in horror as the final girls circuit. It's where she is the last one left the serial killer hasn't taken out, and she has to run away while also passing by the other characters' dead bodies. It was first used here though, I believe, so I'll bring down the board again. It rolls up to 7. Michael, being super strong, bashes his hand through the wooden door and chases Laurie outside. Another thing I really like is that Michael never runs, which is a genius move. He never seems like he's tired or that he exerts energy. He's just an unstoppable force you can't run away from. No matter how fast you run, he's always close behind. Another thing I like about this movie is how it uses the Halloween setting. Because Laurie runs up to a home, screaming for help, but because it's Halloween, the people inside think this is a prank and ignore her. Laurie runs back to her house, but she dropped the keys when she fell down on the stairs. She wakes up Tommy, and it's pretty funny, not gonna lie, him taking his sweet time unlocking the door as Laurie is screaming for her life. Laurie gets inside and tries to call the police, but Michael had the phone line cut. So bring down the board, it rolls up to 8. That is a classic tactic used by slasher killers. Laurie sees that the back door was open, so Michael was in the house. When he went to stab Laurie again, she got out of the way and stabbed him with a knitting needle, definitely killing him for sure. Actually, this is another cliche invented right here. The killer is seemingly dead, but comes back to life for one last scare. It rolls up to 9. Loomis meanwhile meets back up with Brackett, and they are on the hunt for Michael. Laurie gives the kids a hug, but Michael Myers walks back up the stairs to attack. Laurie locks the kids in their rooms before running to her parents' room. Another instance of Laurie being smart. Seriously, slasher characters, take note of this girl. She opens her parents' screen door to make Michael think she jumped off the balcony, when in reality she hid inside the closet and locked the door just to be safe. Unfortunately, it doesn't work because Michael is also intelligent. He probably realized Laurie wouldn't leave the kids behind and starts breaking the screen door in an awesome scene to try and kill Laurie. She's got a backup plan though, and that is to stab him in the eye with a clothes hanger and then again with his knife. Laurie tells the kids to get to the police, but once they're gone, Michael Myers does his best Undertaker impression as he sits back up from being dead. Actually, I think the dead man got it from him. So add another digit to the invention counter, it rolls up to 10. The kids running outside screaming helps Loomis figure out which house Michael was in. Michael tries again to strangle Laurie, but she manages to rip the mask off his head, and for like half a second we see his face. Now while he was masked and doing all these stunts and stuff, he was played by Nick Castle, the very first Michael Myers actor. Without the mask on, he was played by Tony Moran. Something I realized while doing the math in my head, Michael Myers is 21 in his debut appearance. He's younger than me. I don't think a lot of people realize that. You might also be wondering why he's trying so hard to kill this one girl and why he's been following her throughout the movie. Well, that was better explained in the sequel, which told us that Laurie Strode is actually his baby sister and he wants to finish what he started by killing her too. Back with the plot, Michael puts his mask back on as Loomis returns and shoots him again and again with the gun he had earlier, shooting him off the balcony and seemingly killing him. Another weird thing I don't think people realize, this is the very first time Laurie and Loomis are meeting, at the tail end of the film. It's weird that two of the three main characters synonymous with the series don't interact with each other until the very end of the debut movie. I have no idea why. Give them a little introduction before this. It didn't have to be anything crazy, just like, hey, I'm Dr. Loomis, how you doing? Take care of yourself. out there. Laurie asks if that guy was the boogeyman, and Loomis says he was. He peers over the balcony, and Michael is gone, leaving Loomis with just the best look on his face that is just screaming, "This isn't over." Same with Laurie as she cries, terrified. The movie ends in the most ominous way possible. The Michael Myers theme playing as we look at all of the houses and rooms we've been to so far. Hearing Michael breathe heavily, telling us he could be anywhere watching, even right behind you. That's the end of this movie, but how does it rank? Characterization gets a 5. Everyone is really strong in this, the standouts being our trio of Loomis, Laurie, and Michael, having such defined characters, and they work off each other so well. Plus, all the other minor characters are great too. The kids, the dumb friends, and Sheriff Brackett, all amazing. The story's getting a 4. I mean, there are some holes in the story, like how Michael got out of the mental hospital and how he knows how to drive, but other than that, this is a solid classic story. Entertainment gets a 5. It is a lot of fun to watch, especially if you're watching it with friends for the first time. It is really scary, even though it was so simple and using tricks you've seen before, they for some reason still worked. Importance gets a 5. This changed horror forever. It's a must-watch if you're a fan of the genre. When all was said and done, I had a great time. This was one of the best horror films I've ever seen, and if you haven't seen it, you're missing out. Even if you're not that into horror or slasher films, it is just such a well-made movie. You owe it to yourselves to enjoy it. When this film was done in theaters, it left a mark on the film industry that will be left forever. Halloween was not only a cult hit, still viewed to this day, but it also spawned another 12 movies, which I have not really seen, but I've heard they vary in quality, with some of them being great, some of them being alright, and some of them being not so alright. Still, even if we only got bad sequels, we'll always have the original we can always count on to scare us on Halloween night. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoy these horror reviews. I would be down to do some more of my favorites. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.